Perhaps you have noticed recently, people at church, when we sing Praise to the Man, is it as exuberant as you remember from your childhood? Or are people holding back a bit? Do we not sing that song as often? Will it remain in the newer hymn book as we're making adjustments there? When I was a kid, Joseph Smith was one of my heroes. But I'd only heard good stories about him. Some hagiography where we kind of saint people that we're studying. And the more I've grown up, passing through the creation stage, through the fall stage, and onto the atonement stage, I've learned all kinds of things about Joseph Smith, including his human foibles, the foibles of human nature, the weaknesses of youth, and so on. I've also tried my best to let him speak for himself and let his contemporaries and peers speak about what they went through as well, so I can keep things in historical context. That's key. As a historian myself, context is everything, right? Don't study church history too little. Don't fall for the superficial or the selective or the sensational that is so often the case. But keep in mind that Joseph Smith's reputation from the very beginning, even before he had one, he was told it would be a mixed bag. This is Joseph Smith history, verse 33. When the angel Moroni appears, he called me by name, which is exactly what the Father had done when he appeared to Joseph Smith 3 years earlier. Well, nice to know that heaven and earth are on a first name basis. Well, Moroni calls me by name and said unto me that he was a messenger sent from the presence of God to me, that his name was Moroni, so pleased to meet you, that God had a work for me to do. 3 years ago, it was what not to do. Don't join any of the denominations. But now it's time for you to know the work that you will have to do. And it's a work and a glory, believe me. Thy name should be had for good and evil among all nations, kindreds, and tongues. Or that it should be both good and evil spoken of among all people. Now, that would have been eye-opening. Well, this whole experience was eye-opening, right? Knocked the sleep right out of them, right? Middle of the night, boom, a light brighter than the noonday sun, and whoa, this is happening again. But what is he being told? Yes, you're known of God. He hasn't forgotten you over the last 3 years. He's got a work for you to accomplish. But it will be a work of such a nature that it will divide things. Section 1 of the Doctrine and Covenants talks about God pulling out his sword, unsheathing it in heaven, and it's going to come down. The sword is the word. The sword is the Spirit. It comes out of the mouth of God, as John saw in the book of Revelation. And as God speaks, the sword falls to divide people who will listen to that voice from those who refuse to. Those who will accept God's servants and their message as it is the same as what God would have us know, versus those that reject God's servants because they're not God. Good and evil? Religious figures are believed or doubted, but people have strong feelings about them. You name the religious figure. Religion is such a potentially controversial issue that it creates controversies by creating dividing lines. Believers, unbelievers, members, non-members, the faithful, the skeptical, whatever it might be. So Joseph, brace yourself. I know a few verses earlier in Joseph Smith history, you were scratching your head wondering, why would anybody persecute me when I'm an obscure boy of no consequence? I'm a nobody. Well, that's about to change. It already is changing. And from this point forward, the deeper you get involved in the work of God, the more darkness will gather in opposition, and the more light will gather in support. Remember, end of section 1? The devil will have power over his own dominion, and the Lord will have power over his saints. In some ways, the Doctrine and Covenants, since it prepares us for the second coming, is a massive example of apocalyptic literature. And apocalyptic literature, preparing us for the end time, is very dualistic. Black and white, good and evil, spoken of about Joseph Smith by all nations. Yes, Joseph Smith's reputation has taken a hit in this information/misinformation age. I still see frequently in my study of anti-Mormon literature evil disposed and designing persons that are militating against Joseph Smith's character as a prophet of God. They call him a charlatan, a fake. They call him a money grubber as well as a money digger. They call him a theocrat. They call him a pedophile, using shock and awe, sensationalized language to try to pull people in the direction of evil speaking, including among those that once spoke good of him. One of the things that amazes me most about Joseph Smith is how okay with all of that he was. I'll let you judge me for yourself. By these fruits ye shall know me. So I'm leaving the fruits right there to bear witness. How could he have possibly done that? Well, perhaps it's because Moroni prepared him from the very beginning. This is what you're in for. You'll be loved and hated. Don't let either one go to your head.